Tim Burrowes, editor of Mumbrella. Thanks for joining us on the chat.
Always a pleasure.
Now, we're doing a series about media, and of course, Mumbrella, it's a blog news site. Is that how you describe yourself?
It's funny, actually, because depending who you talk to, sometimes we call ourselves a blog and sometimes we don't. My own background is 20 years as a journalist, of which only the last few months I've been predominantly online. We happen to use blogging software, but I'd argue most of what we do is journalistic.
Obviously, the biggest story, not only in the media sort of radio world is, and in mainstream, is the Jackie O Kyle story on FM and their blunder. How did you guys cover that?
Almost in two ways. We started behind the 8 ball because the only journalists who were right onto it were the ones who happened to be driving along or at their desk and heard it live. But then, of course, it very quickly broke into the mainstream. People were talking about it, so we reported it like anybody else. We went to Oz Stereo for a statement like anybody else and began to look at it. The point at which I sort of saw the power of it as something that can drive an audience for us was I happened to be sitting at this very desk on a Sunday night when the press statement arrived from Oz Stereo saying that Kyle and Jackie O weren't going up on the next morning. Now, it took a minute or two to write a single paragraph, they're not going on, here's the statement in full, paste in the statement, post it, and then send out a link to it on Twitter. To date, it's still the most linked to story we've had via Twitter. We had it retweeted that night, something I lost count about 990 times or something, each telling their networks about it and providing a link in. So massive traffic for us, and that was just because we happened to be first, because I was, idiotically sitting here at this desk on a Sunday night.
Do you see yourselves as one of the truly legitimate news sources?
I'm not sure that you have illegitimate news sources. I mean, I think this is one of those great sources of tension between the blogosphere and traditional or heritage or old or whatever you want to call journalism and media. I think that anybody's entitled to a view, but of course the thing that's absolutely changed the game in the last not even the last few months, the last few years, is just the fact that people can reach an audience a lot more easily. They don't need to be able to afford a printing press in order to do it.
There's been a fierce debate, as you said. The head of News Limited gave a speech at the press club recently, and he gave a pretty big whack to the likes of your sort of organisation. What was your response to that?
Yeah, I think one of the terms used was 10% original content. I mean, John Hardigan was the chap who was talking about this. I mean, firstly, the main point to make is 90% of what he has to say is right. There is this huge issue facing journalism, and I don't think a lot of people have faced up to what we perhaps stand to lose. So, we do need to appreciate what we've got before it's gone. But I do think that tilting at the blogosphere, at independent media, that's just a big distraction. That's not what's stealing the eyeballs. That's not what's taking away the advertising. It's something else. It's a bigger thing than that. And I just wonder whether sometimes people are maybe looking in the wrong direction. One of the reasons why, I really do think that the whole bloggers or the blogosphere is part of the problem is I don't think it's taking a mainstream audience. For instance, there's something called Alexa, which is a sort of ranking, very rough ranking of internet traffic. It's not massively scientific, but if you look at that, this graph is over the last year, and it shows how two of our rivals that write about media and marketing and how their traffic has gone over the over the last 12 months. And then you can see this blue line suddenly comes in, and yes, which is Mumbrella when we launched, and you can see that we've picked up traffic and now kind of pretty much up there with them, but they haven't gone down at all as a result. And that's obviously a microcosm because that's one niche. But I'm sure you would find exactly the same thing. When the Punch launched, when the National Times launches from Fairfax, all of those sort of things, they don't actually seem to steal direct traffic from someone. So it's still a growing medium where eyeballs and the time spent with it are growing all of the time. We don't have one rival. I mean, you look at something like let's pull up my RSS feeds. I mean, these are the websites that I will look at that might have something kind of relevant to me, and you can see just sort of scrolling down, and the ones in dark are the ones I've not looked at recently. And it could be any one of those that has something relevant I should have thought of or covered first, or might link to because it's something interesting. So, you know,
obviously now we're talking's on there as well.
Absolutely, now we're talking is. Do you know what? I actually think it is. I'm proud to say, or at the very least, Mike Hickenbotham's particular column is the scrum. There we go, the scrum. Just to prove it to you, it absolutely changes because it's not about one single outlet or a few outlets anymore. It's many, and actually, you know, maybe that's one of the roles of independent media. Call it blogs, call it people like Mumbrella, whatever, is you're acting as a new kind of filter where you're picking the stuff that you believe that your readers will be interested in. The blogosphere is irrelevant to media's problems. You know, it's not what is causing it. So I really don't think the solution will come from it, because that's not where the problem's coming from.
What have you found the most surprising part of your area in the development of Mumbrella?
I suppose as much as anything, it's the speed of change. So, you know, we're absolutely, you know, just in the last few months, we've seen the rise of Twitter, for instance, which, you know, 9 months ago I barely touched, but now it draws about 15% of my traffic, for instance, comes to Mumbrella just through our, you know, stuff either being retweeted or stuff that we tweet ourselves. So that, you know, that is really, it's giving us a route and a voice that maybe we didn't know was there before because it wasn't there, and that suddenly, little things like that are really changing the games.
Is there pressure for you guys to break news?
Pieces, the articles that get the most traffic are the things that have something exclusive in nature. So, you know, that's the other reason why the blogosphere just stealing from old media argument doesn't work, is because the stuff that gets the traffic and the interesting things is where you have something exclusive and interesting to say. Now, sometimes that's an opinion or a piece of analysis or, you know, an original view on something, and sometimes it's just a cold hard fact where you're the first to tell people something. It's the nature of news. It always has been. It just happens to be on a slightly new medium.
Now, how about the debate about pay for view? I mean, this is Rupert Murdoch came out recently saying that's a way we're going to move. The AFR have been criticised in Australia for their pay for view site. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose firstly, maybe the AFR criticism is a bit of a red herring, in that a lot of the criticism has been about the quality of the user experience, the fact that it wasn't a terribly easy process. Now, for instance, something like the Wall Street Journal in the US has proved that if you do it well, you can make it work commercially. So I think for some people who've got the right content, they'll be able to sell some of their content. Whether that commoditised stuff ever gets locked behind a paywall, you know, that here is a really basic fact, here is something that has just been press released to every single outlet. I can't see that people will pay for that, because it will be available in other places too. We do think that there is a room for kind of specialisation, you know, almost vertical by vertical, and it's just picking where there are areas of community and areas where a conversation can be had.
So where do you think the future path is? I asked this question to several of our people in this series, and they just said, look, it's changing so rapidly, it's impossible to say what's going to be happening in 5 years. Is that your view?
Yeah, totally. I mean, 9 months ago, the plan when we launched was not where we've ended up now. You know, we've probably gone faster in terms of traffic than we expected. How the site looks, the services we offer, just, you know, obvious things that now seem obvious, like launching a job board, all of those things which have helped drive our traffic and, you know, help sort of build that community feel. Just lots of little things like that. We didn't think of any of that when we started. So, and that was 9 months ago. So to predict 5 years is absolutely impossible.
Are these sort of ventures profitable?
Yeah, I think the key thing is we're a low-cost model. Almost all of the writing on Mumbrella I do myself. We launched on a piece of software called WordPress, which is free. We used an email service, which is, you know, a matter of a few dollars. So the cost centre is very low. The way we then monetize is we put a little bit of advertising on the website, we put a little bit of advertising on the email newsletter we send out 3 times a week. We do the odd event, so people, you know, if our readers want to support us, they come along to the events and the conferences and the things we do. But I think we can be profitable, but it's with a small newsroom, not a big newsroom.
But big impact. You mentioned in a press club speech, so you've done not bad for 9 months. So
well, very flattered I was too.
Well, thanks for joining us on the chat. It's been very interesting, and hopefully we can come back in about a year and see where Mumbrella's gone to from there.
I'll be excited to find out myself.